Today's Patreon shoutout goes to Z. Etali, Primal Conqueror, versus Freyalise, Karona, and Cormela. We have green into a turn 3 Sky Shroud claim, so yeah. Oh, there's a Kodama's Reach as well, so yeah, definitely keeping this. Draw into a Farseek, so we're getting all the ramp this game apparently, which is exactly what we want in this deck of course. Llanowar Elves on turn 1 for Freyalise. Alright, and that is a Rhythm of the Wild for us, so could just go for the Farseek, but I think guaranteeing a land over the next few turns with Kodama's Reach is a good idea as well. So we'll have a land drop for next turn and the turn after this way. An Ancient Tomb from Freyalise as well, and we see Utopia Sprawl onto a land, not quite enough to get the commander down. We see a Sylvan Scrying searching for a land though, noteworthy that the 5 colour player has a Path of Ancestry in play. And the tutored land is a Gaia's Cradle. Okay, the Great Henge, so we're going to do well this game apparently. Let's drop a Mountain, should be fine, and Sky Shroud Claim. This will bring the lands in untapped, so we could go for Rhythm of the Wild so that our commander can't be countered, and it will come in with haste maybe? So the 2 jewels come in untapped, and yeah, instead of Farseek, let's go for Rhythm of the Wild. We've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana next turn, so yeah, we'll go for Rhythm. Skyclave Relic is not kicked for the Grixis player. Grixis deck obviously at a really distinct disadvantage with ramp, because they can pretty much only rely on rocks. In Rakdos, Izzet, Dimir and Grixis decks, they're all reliant in those colour combinations on rocks really. Unless they go Spellslinger, they can get like ritual effects and stuff, but that's one and done really. Celestia Charm for Karona, so everyone pretty much tapping out here. Gaia's Cradle into play now for the mono green player. Obviously only 1 creature in play, so we'll only tap for 1 at the moment. Our opponent tapping into the Freyalise. What our opponent could have done there was just tap down the Dork and 2 lands to get down Freyalise, and then kept the Gaia's Cradle untapped. Okay, but not wanting to make a Dork anyway, so Rhythm of the Wild comes down, or goes down to the Freyalise. I thought my opponent was going to play a Dork and try and have the Freyalise survive, but there's every chance we're going to get into more creatures, and they would have haste from Rhythm, so that's a better play from our opponent. We did force our opponent to take the Freyalise down at least, so yeah, we go for our commander, see what we can grab. Play a land first so that we can leave dual mana up. So we play Etali without haste here. Still obviously get the ETB. And with that we see a Soul Ring, more ramp in a Talisman, Finn the Fangbearer, and there is a Wheel of Fortune. Do we want to play Wheel of Fortune? Our opponents won't go up too many cards. Let's go Soul Ring, Talisman, get the Finn down. We're going to have 4 mana available once Tiger enters play. Won't be able to play the Great Henge, which is the best thing there. We'll be able to go for Heat Shimmer though. Could hurt our opponent's hand with Wheel of Fortune. Don't particularly mind recasting the Etali though. We can just go for Heat Shimmer onto the Etali. So we will forego the Wheel of Fortune here against my better judgment. Could also go for haste onto our commander now that we've got the extra mana. Protecting it with Hexproof is probably a good idea. As tempting as it is to go for the Heat Shimmer, I think we'll do Swiftfoot Boots instead. So down that comes, put that onto our commander of course, and we'll swing in over at Freyalise. Argument to be made for us landing commander damage on an opponent, but we can always one-shot players out of the game with the Infect thing, which I'll try not to do. Another commander in the form of Cormela, Glamour Thief this time. And then making a bunch of Grixis instant and or sorcery mana. Alright, and forcing our opponent to put 7 life into a Toxic Deluge, which will deal with their own commander, so yeah, that's desperate times. We're just likely recasting our commander next turn, which we did account for. We knew that we might have to do that, and we're fine doing it. So returning the Toxic Deluge to hand with the Cormela. Looks like they're leaving Cormela in the bin, which hopefully they did on purpose. Grixis should have plenty of means of fishing the creature out of the bin, reanimating the creature out of the bin. A Swiftfoot Boots comes down for Karona as well. And then a Talisman of Curiosity, the Simic one. From the green player, we see a Deserted Temple now, which they can untap the Guy's Cradle with. Guy's Cradle doesn't tap for mana. There's a Doubling Season, which is always scary to see. So Freyalise will come down with the 6 loyalty it needs to minus immediately. It will need creatures in play for that, though. Okay, so I wouldn't say no to a land here. Our commander's going to cost 9. It would be good to get the Great Henge into play. Jesus, I do apologise to my opponents. We're having all the luck in the world here. I mean, really, Etali's too strong. It's only 1 mana extra from the original Etali, no rarity shift, and you get all these extra abilities on it. So it is too strong, really, but if all you have to do is ramp into your commander and go off, it's very similar to Maelstrom Wanderer. And, yeah, probably too strong, to be honest. We have to play the cards that we draw into, no matter how bad we feel about it. So down comes the Etali again, and definitely not playing a Damnation. There's a Rite of Replication, which we could do on our commander because it's an ETB. Eldritch Evolution we can't cast because we'd have to sack our commander. Rex Sage, we can blow up the Doubling Season with that. So yeah, get down the Rex Sage. Rite of Replication lets us cast with the Kicker, interestingly. Yeah, we're just 4 mana shy. Just for the fun of it, I would have kicked that, but just have to go for the 1 Etali. So only getting 2 spells there, but we are going to get another copy here, so it will trigger again. Choose which one to keep. We will keep the original one. So we still get the ETB, but the copy does go into the graveyard. And therefore we get another enter the battlefield, because the copy does still enter play, of course. And this time it is a Midnight Clock, Chromatic Lantern, Fierce Empath, and some haste enabling in Xenagos, God of Revels. So we'll play all of these. Fierce Empath lets us tutor up a big creature. Let's see here, do we just go for something simple like Pathbreaker Ibex? Yeah, especially with Xenagos in play, that might be fun, so we'll just go for that. It's not the most efficient call that we could have gone for. We could have gone for some more means of card advantage and stuff, but we're already doing a bit of pub stomping here. Not on purpose, it's just we got a really cracked hand, and Etali is busted. Alright, so Rex Sage, we have to get rid of the Doubling Season, and then eventually get on with the turn. The Great Henge is free, because it costs 7 less, so 2 mana to play it, and it taps for 2 mana. Definitely go Swiftfoot Boots onto the Etali. Noteworthy that the Xenagos is animated as well. Does this give haste? I always forget with this. Yes, it does gain haste, so we could put the Swiftfoot Boots on the Xenagos instead. But yeah, we've used the mana now, so Pathbreaker Ibex we cannot afford, unfortunately, so as fun as Heat Shimmer might be, we'll go for the Farseek instead. So through to the beginning of combat, I think I'll go after the Dimir player, or the Grixis player, because they're just going to keep going for that Toxic Deluge, which does mean that we might lose the Xenagos here, but maybe if we hit them for enough damage, they won't want to go for that. I don't see what choice they have, really, to be honest. Noteworthy that he will take the Sol Ring if he goes down, so that could be relevant to us as well. He'll also take the Midnight Clock also, which I don't think we're going to have time to get the wheel with that. Anyway, one more hit from our commander and he goes down next turn. So now the Toxic Deluge again, just forcing the Grixis player to do it ultimately. Maybe he'll be lucky and see the back of the Swiftfoot Boots, but like I said before, that does get rid of the Xenagos because it was animated. Our commander goes back into the command zone, and now it's a Seasoned Pyromancer, discarding a Scholar of Ages and an Invasion of Kaldheim. Karona entering play for the 5-colour player, and throwing a Combat Research onto that one. The Karona swings in at us. It is a 9/9 with Ward 1, and they're going to draw a card to this as well. I think if we get into a land next turn, we can play our commander again, flip it, and give it haste. Maybe one-shot this player out, because we're at risk of losing to commander damage there now. Just have to hope that we don't see Toxic Deluge again from this player, because it is in the bin at this point. And now this player has gained control of Karona, so if that swings in towards us, then, like I said, we are very much at risk of losing to that. A Jeweled Lotus from our opponent. So if they decide to play their commander and deal with any of our rocks, that will make things more difficult for us. And this is where I might get punished for not dunking on my opponents, because the Pathbreaker Ibex, looking pretty useless at this point. But as long as it's a fun game, I don't particularly mind if we win or lose. So there goes Freyalise. Our opponent could go for the Swiftfoot Boots as well with Freyalise. Looks like he's not particularly eager to make a dork, so likely looking at killing something. Yeah, going after the Swiftfoot Boots so they don't have to worry about haste anymore, meaning we likely can't deal with anyone next turn. So this thing is very much a threat. So we take another hit to the Karona, and it will get +3/+3 again. So we go up to 18. The green player draws a card to the combat research. And then it's round to our turn. The Midnight Clock can tap into its own ability, so we'll put another counter on that. So we are down to 16, and we're going to be getting bolted by the Mana Crypt, most likely. So Midnight Clock gets a counter, we gain control of Karona the False God. Don't think we have a means of sacrificing in this deck. Alright, and the Homeward Path being activated now, so our opponent's teaming up against us, which is what they have to do pretty much. Good that they're doing that during the upkeep, because what we could have done there is gone for Heat Shimmer, made a copy of this and forced this back into the command zone. So I don't think there's anything that we're going to do here. We just have to allow them to have the Karona back. Trying to minimise the number of cards we're drawing there, I would think. Oh, okay, and Homeward Path is bugged apparently. Oh, that's really irritating. That totally changes the game. It's given Sol Ring back, the Midnight Clock, the Talisman over here. Yeah, Homeward Path has given all the non-creature stuff back as well. Yeah, that's irritating to go down to something like that. I was hoping that we might be able to fight our way out of this. But Homeward Path on Magic Online totally breaks Etali. Can we even afford our commander here? Yes, we can afford it, so we'll just do it for the fun of it here. I'm not hopeful that we'll do much of anything now. So, Great Henge, we'll put on the stack... put Etali on the stack first, because something we draw into might make what we cast with Etali relevant. I doubt it, but we'll see what happens here. So it's a plus counter on Etali. We drew into the E-Witness, which, thanks to a lack of mana, we might have been able to go for the Swiftfoot Boots there, but I don't think it would have been relevant. We really needed to deal poison damage to this player in order to get rid of that Karona. We've still got mana held up for the ward on Karona. Maybe we could get into some spot removal, although they can likely afford to recast Karona and put the boots on there. Alright, so we see Force of Negation, doesn't do anything. Security Bypass, which means our commander can't be blocked. A Burgeoning with no lands in hand. And a Splinter Twin with no haste. So we'll just put the 2 auras on our commander. Okay, so with that done, we'll go for the Vandal Blast. That can go on the Swiftfoot Boots because we're worried about both Hexproof and Haste. Don't think anyone's going to be dealing with the Karona. We'll likely be forced to block with the Etali next turn, actually. It'll be a 9/9, won't it? So that'll probably swing in towards us. We'll be forced to block with the Etali, and then the Karona will just swing in at us again, so yeah. We're done either way to the Karona here, I think. Frantic Search from the Grixis player. Maestro's Charm after that. The Frantic Search does untap lands, so they can go for another spell after this. Looking at the top 5 cards, 1 in hand, the rest in the bin. So we've now got Ancient of Erebos and a basic from the Frantic Search in the graveyard. And then another basic, Living Death, Rakdos Signet, and a Massacre Worm were discarded to the Grixis spell. Karona will be under the control of the Grixis player here. Midnight Clock, we've added another counter to, and then it's just going to benefit this player. Still another couple of turn cycles left on this though. Noteworthy that they will shuffle, I think they shuffle their graveyard with this, don't they? Yeah, shuffle your hand and graveyard and draw 7, so not necessarily what they want with their commander. I wonder what the aim is with that. A Grey Merchant of Asphodel is, they'll have Devotion of 3 with that, so gain a decent amount of life. Going up to 20 is much better. We're down to 13 at this point. So the Karona swings in at us, as you would expect. Yeah, it's a shame about losing out on that mana, because it might have been a Heat Shimmer, and then Eternal Witness, grab back the Heat Shimmer, do it again, and maybe we could have got into an answer in all that for the Karona. But yeah, Magic Online bugs are often going to spoil games, unfortunately. So hopefully this player takes the Homeward Path out of the deck so that it doesn't do that to other players. We will force the Karona player to send the Karona in towards us. Don't want to warp the game any more than it's been warped, so we will play it out here. I'll leave Etali in the graveyard so that Eternal Witness can grab it back if by some miracle we manage to survive. A Curiosity onto the Karona now. Obviously he has control of his Karona again. Have to assume that this is some kind of Voltron deck. Although it is noteworthy that with Karona you can go down to your own commander damage, so if you give this over to your opponent and they hit you for 21, you will go down to your own commander damage. So it's risky in that regard. But maybe this player has prison style effects to make it more difficult swinging at him. A Staggering Insight after that, +1/+1 lifelink and card draw. So it will now be a 10-10 when it swings him. And likely comes in at us. Yep, gonna finish us off. We're down to 13 anyway, so likely that we would have fallen over to a stiff breeze. And just want to show some appreciation for my opponents as well. That, yeah, they didn't scoop when they were getting battered by Etali, or potentially battered by Etali. They decided to pool their resources together and get rid of us, which is exactly what you should do in a game of Commander. And although we had every right to win this one, we are the first to go down, which is, like I said, exactly how a game of Commander should go here, so very good game to my opponents. And we'll obviously keep watching the game here and see who ends up winning this one. Karona going to draw cards. It will draw cards for everyone who hits with it, but the idea being that this is going to deal commander damage to your other opponents. I personally would use Karona to swing in at the Karona player in order to threaten commander damage. Try and outrace them on their own commander. I don't like being manipulated into dealing my opponent's commander damage for him onto the other players. A Sterling Grove now. Our opponent has his colours fixed because he did take back his Chromatic Lantern. So we're seeing a much different game than we would have done. A Sanctum Weaver as well, so has gone for some enchantment stuff. Oracle of Muldiah for the green player. And deciding to tick up the Freyalise to make a Dort this time. Showing a land on top, which is what you want to see most of the time with Oracle of Muldiah, into an Overmauled Hydra on top of the library. Now a Mana Vault. And now, yeah, the green player doing exactly what I would do. Karona, gonna put commander damage on himself. Can block with the Sanctum Weaver, which is noteworthy. It doesn't have unblockable or anything. So yeah, deciding to throw Sanctum Weaver in the way, losing out on mana. But will keep this player from dealing commander damage and drawing 3. Not sure if the... I can't remember if the Grixis player, I thought he had mana held up there, and I don't think he ticked up the Midnight Clock. Not sure. Anyway, gaining control of the 7/7 Karona. Ardent Elementalist. When it enters, return an instant or sorcery from graveyard to hand. And they aim for the Living Death, which can be somewhat of a board wipe. Could use that to sacrifice the Karona maybe, that's the aim. Homeward Path going to be activated again, which hopefully isn't all that relevant that it's bugged, now that it's just Karona that's going to be getting bounced around, so trying to keep him off drawing cards with that thing. It is playing into the Karona's hand, unfortunately, because he's dodging commander damage on himself with his own commander here. So casting the Living Death after it's been returned back to hand. And down comes a Massacre Worm, which will take out the Sanctum Weaver over here. Takes out the Fierce Empath. Leaves Finn in play and takes out the Llanowar Elves. Fierce Empath will still get a tutor. Also brought back Scholar of Ages, returning 2 instants and or sorceries. The commander was left in the bin, so that comes back out. And Agent of Erebos will exile the green player's graveyard. Scholar of Ages is going after the Living Death again, as well as the Rite of Replication. The commander turns in down the middle at Karona. Might be worth swinging in at Freyalise there and trying to land some commander damage. Could get rid of the Finn, or you could land damage on the Freyalise. Either way, it's a good outcome. Obviously this has Death Touch, but it doesn't have any power at the minute thanks to the Massacre Worm, so... Anyway, dealing some commander down the middle. Karona back into play again. And they will get a Scry thanks to the Path of Ancestry. Then a Mask of Memory coming into play. And the 5/5 Karona turns in towards the Grixis player. Yeah, they could just block that. Their hand's going to get shuffled thanks to the Midnight Clock, so they'll have to be careful what they put in the bin here. Deciding to throw away the Agent of Erebos, don't care about that apparently. Noteworthy that there's an Inkmoth Nexus now. I'm not sure if that's just come into play. If they animate that, it will have Summoning Sickness, if it did come into play this turn. Okay, an Apex Altasaur is a means of getting rid of some relevant creatures. So going straight after the Massacre Worm. Ready to shuffle that away next turn. Going after the Scholar as well. And I would leave this in play if I was my opponent. I know they can ramp with it, but if that thing dies, they can grab back things from the bin to help set themselves up. Maybe do something during the upkeep before the shuffle. Yeah, so leaving the commander in play, as well as the Apex Altasaur. Okay, Freyalise going to minus down on the Midnight Clock. I'm not sure about that. I think I'd rather have the Graveyard Spellslinger player have his graveyard get shuffled, to be honest. I know he'd go up 2 cards, but yeah, I think I would have left that alone, personally. Now a Conjurer's Closet, which goes very nicely with the Apex Altasaur. But it's noteworthy that if this thing swings in towards, I think it's 14 points of commander damage from the Karona, surely. Yeah, the Corona's going into the left, so that should be commander damage. It's an 8-8 now. And the Finn is swinging in that way as well. Okay, they stuck at 14 points of commander damage there, so... Oh, it must have been 14 damage from Etali that our opponent had. So, not going down to the commander damage there. Did get 2 poison counters from the Finn, and then deciding to flicker Finn with Conjurer's Closet. The Homeward Path has been tapped down as well, so Karona will get a free hit. So, casting the Living Death again. Giving back the Scholar of Ages, which they just blew up, along with the Massacre Worm. I really don't understand why they didn't allow the graveyard to be shuffled. A Grey Merchant of Asphodel with a lot more devotion this time. It's 6 devotion. Agent of Erebos and the Ardent Elementalist. It's the Karona player that is getting the graveyard exiled from the agent this time. Cormela is going to bring something back from the graveyard. That is the Frantic Research. Scholar of Ages is targeting the Maestro's Charm and the Living Death. Ardent Elementalist targets the Toxic Deluge. The Argent Pyromancer discards again the Toxic Deluge and getting rid of a Feed the Swarm as well. So making a couple of elementals. Frantic Search going to put some relevant stuff in the bin maybe. Binning a Shock and a Damnation. Gonna have to be careful going for the Living Death while the Apex Altasaur is in the bin. Instead casting Demonic Tutor. Then we see Mana Crypt. Then it's Ghostly Flicker going to flicker in both the fast mana. So obviously those on tap when they re-enter for 4 additional mana. Rionia the Fire Dancer. And they'll get a copy of the Grey Merchant of Asphodel 4 times here, because they've cast 4 instants and or sorceries this turn. So that is 5 triggers with the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Oh, they get 5 copies, not 4. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16 per Grey Merchant of Asphodel trigger. So very convincingly winning that one. So it turned out to be an interesting game, and yet another game in which we prove why you don't scoop early, because against all odds our opponent has managed to win this one, even though it looked like we were going to win it commandingly. So massive thank you to my opponents for playing it out, and a huge thank you to you for watching as well. Also want to pay homage to the patrons who are keeping me around on this channel. If it wasn't for them I probably would have given up by now, so I do thank them profusely. I'm Tribalkai. Thank you for watching.